Welcome back to Reading Bear. Today, we will take a look at some new malicious compliance stories. And if you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comments. Let's go!
The first story is titled, I Need a Doctor's Note to Stop Teaching? Okay, let's play. Background: back in January, I took a teaching position at a Title I school. Title I generally means families have low income and schools have very few resources. I was fine with that. I took over the Algebra I class in the middle of the year because the other teacher had had enough. That should have been a sign, but I took the job anyway. As spring break began to stretch on, I had accepted that we wouldn't be going back to school for the year. I got a call from the principal of the elementary school. The district where I worked had 1 M, 2 middle, and 1 HS shortly after spring break, aka before the changes to teaching were made, offering me what was pretty much a dream position for the 2020-2021 school year. I took the position and signed a contract. As the debates, lies, and harassment about the upcoming fall semester carried on over the summer, my mental health plummeted. I mean almost rock bottom. That led to even more physical health concerns and a stronger course of medication for mental health. I was terrified and often went into a panic at the drop of a hat. Awful things were being said to us and thrown at us. Towards the end, I cried just opening and reading emails from the school. So I decided that this job where I had zero resources and was under the poverty line, even fully employed, wasn't worth my mental and physical health. We were going to have to triple our responsibilities with half the supplies we needed. I quit and turned in a very professional resignation letter. Here's where it gets interesting. My principal and superintendent tried to counter my resignation because I was under contract, even though they'd violated it already, but that's another story, and it took several well-written emails to be released without penalty. I'm one of the few teachers actually licensed in my area, so they didn't want to lose me, even if that meant making me angry. I resigned for health reasons, kept vague in my letter, never give them more info than they need, and the superintendent said I needed a doctor's note. He informed me of this 2.5 hours before the board meeting. The school board has to release you from your contract if the superintendent counters the action is scheduled. Okay. Let's play. I scrambled and my primary care doctor sent a note over. 3 minutes after the deadline to get it submitted to the board, the superintendent pulled that we haven't told teachers yet, but we're starting the year online, so this note doesn't count because you have to prove you can't work from home. Okay. I called up my psychiatrist. I've been seeing him for 6 years for depression and anxiety, and some other stuff that's not relevant. There's a particular nurse there who has a thing for people who mess with disabled people. Now I function very well and work very hard, so my disabilities don't seem obvious, but they are still very much there. She drew up this absolutely scathing letter about how the district has caused intense emotional stress and created a dysfunctional work environment. She referenced an ADA bylaw too, I think. She sent it down to my psychiatrist's office to get it signed. He reviews everything, and I said, okay, hang on, let me try one more thing. I had not previously responded to the superintendent's email about a second note, but I decided I needed to. I sent back a short email that said that I was disappointed that I would need to share such private medical information after already supplying an original note, but that my psychiatrist would be sending one over because I wanted to do my best to comply with your requests. Apparently, psychiatrist and disability are the magic words for getting out of a contract because of how many lawsuits those words open up. I got a call later that day from my principal. The superintendent didn't even have the guts to call me himself, saying that I've been released from my contract. I called my nurse back and let her know I didn't need that note because they'd decided one was enough, but it's still in my file in case the district tries to reverse their decision. The next story is titled, My First Homework Assignment. To set the scene, it's 1993, and my mother owned and operated a small investment software business out of our basement. Her office was fully equipped, with every computer or electronic type machine you would expect in a regular office, but it was quite unusual to have some of these devices at home at the time. I usually regularly go hang out with her in the office while she was working, and play with whatever I could reach, so she taught me how to use some of the equipment, I'm assuming so I didn't accidentally break everything I got my hands on. I had just received my very first homework assignment in the first month of second grade, and proudly told my mum that I had homework just like a big kid, and had done it. Right before I went to bed, she decided that it would be a pretty good idea to check said homework, and asked me what it was and to show it to her. I confidently explained that the assignment was to copy my spelling words, and showed her the result. Knowing a better way to accomplish this assignment than the other dummies in my class that were writing them all out by hand, I had simply put the list of spelling words on my mum's Xerox machine in her office and hit the copy button. I was allowed to get away with it that one time, but after my mum spoke with my teacher the next day when she dropped me off at school, the instructions for copying spelling words on future homework assignments explicitly specified writing them out by hand. The next story is titled Maliciously Complying with a No Phone Rule in Science Class. My junior year of high school, 2016-2017, I had to take a biology class. It was generally a freshman or sophomore class, but as I had been jumping between high schools, I still needed the biology credit. As such, I was the only junior in the class. My science teacher was a very rude person. Not in a "I hate you" kind of way, but in an "I'm better than all of you and I can do no wrong" kind of way. He made it a habit to hand out detentions like candy, to the point where the school had to ask him to stop giving people detention. Obviously none of us liked him and made it our sole purpose to annoy the crap out of him, and thus the entire year was full of malicious compliance from all of us, like not coming back to class when he sent us out of the room. As the teacher added more rules, it became easier to find ways to annoy him. When he added a rule about leaving backpacks in the front of the room with phones in them, I was already having a bad day and decided to have some fun. We were watching some video about turtles and I was using my phone. When he caught me, he told me to put it in my backpack, so I did. About 10 minutes later, I decided to make it look like I was on my phone by putting my hands under my desk and looking in my lap. Anytime he yelled at me, other students would yell back saying, "He's not even on his phone, why are you yelling at him?" I did this several times throughout the class and he moved me 3 separate times to try to watch me better and catch me on my phone, which wasn't with me. I finally ended up at the front of the room in front of the projector playing the turtle movie, facing the rest of the class in a chair with no desk so he could see my hands. This made it so no one could watch the movie, which means we couldn't take the test on it. 3 weeks later, the teacher proudly told our whole class he wouldn't have to deal with "kids like you" anymore because he was switching to a middle school the next year. I guess he was wrong, because the next year he got fired from the middle school as none of his students were on track with any other school in the district. The next story is titled Lesson Plans Must Be Posted by the Door. My first year as a teacher, I worked in one of the largest schools still left in NYC. Our bosses were jerks. Teachers are required to have a lesson plan every day, but nowhere required it like this school. They wanted them printed out and posted by the door every day. They'd come by and pick them up occasionally, and if they didn't like you and your lesson, they'd come observe you and give you a hard time. Now, NYC has a rule that says the bosses can't tell you a specific format for how the lesson plans are written or where to write them. So, could be digital like a Google Doc, written in a book, typed out and printed. Or it could be written in ketchup on a pizza box. One co-worker who was sick of my boss's crap and on her last year in the system, duct taped her plan to the door written in ketchup on a pizza box. She is my hero. She said it took a lot longer than just typing it out, but she was sick of so much nonsense that she needed to make a point. The next story is titled, Fine Then I Won't Stay Inside Your House. So this happened yesterday to my grandma's youngest brother and his wife. They had an argument about a lot of issues that I won't get into, and ultimately the argument escalated to a full-blown verbal fight. It is because of husband's dismissive attitude and anger issues. The husband is a POS and he said that if the wife can't respect his wishes, then she can't stay inside his house. The wife is pissed off and packs a suitcase and leaves the house at around 9:30 p.m. at night. He assumes that she will come back by 10 and doesn't even try to stop her. He waits till 11 p.m. and she isn't back, and also she is not answering any calls or replying to texts. His 20-year-old daughter starts crying and made a huge scene in the house. He sets off to go and search for her. It's important to note that this is a small rural town where everyone knows each other. The husband has an old car with no silencer and a few people in the nearby houses wake up. He explains what happened to them and then everyone starts searching for her. It's 1 a.m. in the morning and still she has not been found. The police station in town is at least 4 hours away, so they have to go in the morning. Also, it had gone on lockdown. The husband is extremely worried and everyone was angry with him for being so unkind to his wife and not stopping her. Someone then suggested one last search in the estate that they have just in case they find at least some clue. This time they even checked the terrace of the tiny building where the solar panel was placed, which had been deemed unnecessary before. The terrace was surprisingly unlocked, and when they went in they found her. She had made a small pillow of her clothes and was sleeping with her head on the suitcase. She was woken up and it was found out that she had switched off her phone. The wife knew that it wasn't safe to go out at night, but she didn't want to go back to her house, so this was the place she chose to stay in. The best part is that the daughter already knew. She denied it but confided in grandma, and she did the extra theatrics to scare her dad. Everyone still took the wife's side and some people of the village even threatened the husband. In conclusion, the husband is really scared of the wife and will definitely keep his anger in check in the future. The next story is titled, Free Work Backfired for Greedy Father. So my dad makes me pay $800 a month to live with him. It's the same price as a good apartment where I live, and I always pay on time. At the end of July, I paid the $800 for August, and he set the money behind the TV. I got in an argument with my dad, and he starts getting heated. He tells me that I didn't pay rent, and if I don't do 3 hours of yard work every day this month, then he'll call the police and burn all my things. So, as he suggested, I get my boots and work gloves on, take the non-existent rent money from behind the TV, and started working. I love yard work, by the way, so this was a steal of a deal for me. Later that night, I heard him throwing a fit because he lost the rental money, and now my mum is mad at him. He's always taking advantage of my kindness, and he's always trying to find out how to get the next dollar out of me. The next story is titled, Here's My Work for the Rest of the Year. Not me, but my husband. Let me preface by saying that he's very smart, but has never been the type to go the extra mile as it concerns academics. Apparently when he was in high school, he had a science class that he considered a joke. In general, he got along very well with his teachers, but he did not like or have much respect for this teacher, don't remember why. Regardless, the teacher wasn't exactly a dynamic instructor. Her lessons generally consisted of regurgitating the textbook via PowerPoint and then asking the students to answer the questions at the end of the section and turn them in the next day. My husband never paid attention. He'd read or do work for another class. He always turned his assignments in on time though and had an A in the class. One day the teacher called him out for his behavior, stating that he needed to pay attention and do the work for her class if he was in there. The next day, he dropped a massive stack of papers on her desk. He'd answered every single question in the entire book, essentially doing all his work for the rest of the year. All he said was, "Will you leave me alone now?" and returned to his desk with a book. She stared at him with her mouth open and never said another word to him again. The next story is titled, Okay then, if you know what way to go then go. When I was in high school I got to go to France. It was a wonderful trip. We got to see castles, visit a winery, sadly could not drink any, and visit a bunch of cool cities. This trip we went with Mrs. French. Mrs. French had a horrible sense of direction. She got our group lost at least 3 times if not more. Twice on the trip she had gotten the group lost and I was able to get us back where we needed to be. Sometimes it was literally just going north on a street rather than south, or the place we needed to be was around the block. Now I take after my dad, so if I know the general direction or, heaven forbid, remember freaking landmarks or have a map I am set. I am also stubborn as all get out if someone keeps sending me the wrong way and I know it's the wrong way. This is important. Picture this, frazzled lost teacher, gets us lost in the Louvre. So she had to ask for directions like 4 times. I piped up if we went up a level and to the right we would end up back in the atrium. Did she listen? Yes, but then she made a mistake. Mrs. French, if we go up these stairs and go right we will be back in the main lobby area. Mrs. French replied with a sentence no teacher should say. Okay then, if you know what way to go then just go. She did not have to tell me twice. I think part of the reason she did not like my option was that there were more stairs. The Louvre is massive and there is a lot of walking involved. So off I went. I walked through the sculpture wing and then headed to the gift shop. I realized it was not nice to drop back and just leave the group. But at that point I was pretty annoyed. As a soon-to-be parent, if my 16-year-old daughter left the group in a foreign country and knew as little of the language as I did, I would lose my ever-loving mind. I was later found by another girl in the group and had people assigned to me. But the next time she got us lost and I said where we should go, I did not get any arguments. She never did forgive me for that, and sadly even my younger siblings had to deal with this woman giving them crap in school. Oh well, I was still right, you old bat. The next story is titled, Man Asks for Everything on His Burger. Proceeds to get everything on his burger. This story takes place back to when my mum was in high school working at a Dairy Queen. She was working the grill while her co-worker was at the drive-thru. A guy orders a double cheeseburger and then asks to put everything on it. The co-worker explained what everything was at the time: lettuce, tomato, onion, and pickles with condiments. The guy explains that's not what he meant and raises his voice. I said I want everything. So you better give me everything. The co-worker calls him to the window and the manager again explains to him what everything was and repeats what co-worker said. The guy who just ordered is now getting pissed for no reason and is just being an absolute dick at the point. Mum drops the guy's bag to be handed to him and hears the guy starting to cuss at her manager. The guy eventually cuts the manager off and yells, "Just give me everything you have back there." The manager slams the window and takes the order to the back with my mum right behind. Mum is told to grab whatever food she can find and to put on the burger. She doesn't remember everything as this was over 2 decades ago. But it had chili, horseradish, chicken, bacon, and then a full hand of pickles for good measure. Pretty much take a look at the menu back then and they made sure it was on the burger. Everything except for ice cream. Mum and her manager looked at each other with a grin on their face. They needed 3 sheets just to even wrap it. The manager then walked the order out to the guy himself and told him to enjoy. I guess the guy didn't like it as he never came back. The next story is titled, Take a Seat. Okay. It was a hot day and half the school was already absent because they couldn't care less about the last day of school. Me and my brother met up in the hallways and although we should have been in class, no teacher really cared or enforced it. That is, every teacher but Mr. B. He was a computer science teacher that for some reason always seemed to have a stick up his butt. So now, me and my brother Sean were walking the halls and got a glimpse of our cousin Drungus in Mr. B's class. We decided to go in and play on the computers and mess around with our cousin. Mind you, this was the last period of the day, so we just really didn't think we would be opposed at all. Then Mr. B comes up to us. "Mr. B, what are you two doing in here?" Me, because Sean has always been a bit shyer than me, so I spoke up. We came to visit Drungus and he wanted to mess around in a computer with us. Mr. B, Sean, you guys have to go back to your regular class, and we are watching a movie not using the computers anyway. At this point we had pleaded with him to stay on the computer. He refused and gave us the ultimatum of leaving his class or taking a seat at the desks and watching the movie. Some prior knowledge is that we were in an after-school club with him, so he genuinely liked us, but just was rather strict. So, me, Sean and Drungus all got a little smirk and we took a computer chair, picked it up and all ran down the halls. I couldn't hear what he called after us over our laughter. And then suddenly, the bell rang. Great timing considering it was last period, so we burst out the door after running to it and we began our walk home with a computer chair on 2 of our shoulders. We brought it to our home and we still have it in our basement now after the move. And thankfully he had a sense of humor, because when me and Sean went back to our city to visit Drungus and our friends, we saw Mr. B walking his dogs. We asked him what he thought about that prank we pulled and he said he didn't mind it but was down a chair for the entire year because the school had more important things to replace first. The next story is titled, No Sauce? Okay. In these times of germs, as a waiter, I can no longer drop a bottle of ketchup off at a table. Instead, I have to ask each person if they'd like any sauces with their meal. Sometimes I try to speed things up by saying something like, "Would you like some ketchup or mustard for your burger or your fries?" Every once in a while I get a, "No thanks." I try again, "Are you sure? No ketchup? No nothing?" Usually they're like, "Oh yeah, I guess I'll take some ketchup." But every once in a while they say, "Yes." I always recite people's orders back to them when I drop off their food, but when they say they don't want sauce, I make sure to mention it. For example, "I've got a turkey club with ranch and sweet potato fries for you sir, an elk burger with french fries and no sauce over here," and if they decide they do want sauce, I'll gladly go some for them, but I'm not gonna make it easy since they're making me take an extra trip. I'd say about a quarter of the time customers say, "I know you asked earlier, but could I please have some?" If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel and post some bear emojis in the comment.